babies. There's pictures of little children inside Gaza coming to this ceremony to watch the bodies of Israeli babies who were murdered in captivity.
The depravity of that means that I'm not safe anywhere in this entire world as a Jew anymore.
But I believe that it has something to do with waking us up from our 2,000-year-old coma. Yeah. The irony is these Hamas people, if they only understood the blessing that the temple would be for them, they would be helping us build it. This is the time to strengthen and fortify your faith. Everybody around the world, no, don't believe, but no.
Welcome to the Israel Guys and the Land of Israel Network, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Guys, thank you for being with us. A lot of people saying a very difficult day, one of the saddest days in Israel, especially since October 7th. Have a lot to get into. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you're following us. Happy to be here with Rabbi Ari Abramowitz, Joshua Waller. Unfortunately, Jeremy is not feeling very well today. But Bibi Netanyahu saying today is going to be a very hard day for Israel. I think it would be appropriate to start with this clip from the Prime Minister of Israel. Let's watch this.
מחר יום מאוד קשה למדינת ישראל. יום מטלטל. יום של יגון. אנחנו מחזירים הביתה 4 מחטופינו האהובים, חללים. אנחנו מחבקים את המשפחות, והלב של אומה שלמה נקרא. הלב שלי נקרא, גם שלכם. וצריך שהלב של כל העולם יקרא. כי פה רואים מול מי יש לנו עסק, עם מה יש לנו עסק, עם איזה מפלצות. אנחנו עוד אוהבים, אנחנו כואבים, אבל אנחנו גם נחושים. להבטיח שדבר כזה לא יקרה יותר.
So Bibi Netanyahu is saying today is a heart-wrenching day. You know, the heart of the prime minister, the entire nation of Israel, and really the entire sane world is torn in two because Hamas, as we speak, has released 4 bodies of Israeli hostages from Gaza, obviously passed away, dead, right, in exchange for a very disproportionate number of convicted terrorists, some of them murders, convicted murders. So very awful. But so particularly heart-wrenching about this is 3 of these, the bodies of these hostages are the Bibas family, Shiri Bibas and her 2 babies. When it's this is really captured the heart, I think, of the entire nation of Israel because it's so awful. Obviously, the father was released just a couple of weeks ago, not knowing what the fate of his wife and his 2 toddler, one a baby, one a toddler were, and now we know they were killed while in Gaza. They're taken into captivity on October 7th. So just an awful day in Israel. Obviously, you know, we want to find the light in this situation, but just to bring you kind of up to speed what's happening. I know there was a lot of confusion last weekend because you were seeing some statements from Bibi Netanyahu. You were seeing things happening in Israel last weekend with hostages being released. And you were seeing these strong statements from President Trump. And people are wondering what's going on. Why does President Trump seem more strong against Hamas than even the Prime Minister of Israel is? So where things stand right now is that Israel is still going along with this first phase of the ceasefire deal that they started with Hamas in Gaza. And right now, today, 4 bodies of Israeli hostages being released, and the 6 remaining living hostages in this ceasefire deal are set to be released this Saturday. 2 of them are actually hostages that have been captive inside Gaza for 10 years. We're talking a decade. They wandered into Gaza, somehow got stuck there, and they've been then hostage for a decade. No idea the condition of these hostages, but very interesting. So basically, after this weekend, this phase of the ceasefire deal will be over, and it remains to be seen what's going to happen. Now, I'd like to hear some speculation from you guys. Supposedly, there's another 31 living hostages inside Gaza after this weekend. There could be. My question is there any remaining living hostages in Gaza, especially now that we're seeing 2 of the ones set to be released are guys that have been there for a decade? Like, is there even a possibility that there's more living hostages inside of Gaza?
It's
Time is running out to get the discounted 25% off registration price for the Israel Summit in Dallas, Texas, this June 9th through 11th, 2025. If you want to join myself, Joshua Waller, Ari Abramowitz, Jeremy Gimpel, Yishai Fleischer, Naomi Khan, Ambassador David Friedman, and the musical group Yonina, and many, many more, you need to sign up right now. Link is in the description below. You can get your tickets 25% off, but that discount is ending very, very soon, and a lot of people are signing up for this incredible event. So I want you guys to go right now, click the link in the description below, get your 25% off. Come to Dallas, Texas, June 9th through 11th. Bring your family. We have discounts for children, for teenagers. We want everyone to come meet thousands of other Israel supporters, amazing speakers from Israel, the pioneers and the heroes of Judea and Samaria and all of Israel. Guys, join us in Dallas, Texas this June 9th through 11th. Click that link in the description below, but please don't wait because people are signing up, so many people already, and we want to make sure you get your tickets and that you can get them at the discounted price of 25% off, which is ending very, very soon. Click the link in the description below to join us at the Israel Summit, June 9th through 11th in Dallas, Texas. Love to see you there.
It's impossible to know because Hamas cynically takes advantage of Israel's, I think, even flawed love for life and this Achilles heel we have of wanting to bring our hostages home, even at the expense of committing the same ridiculous hostage deals that have allowed for October 7th to happen. Sinwar was released in exactly such a deal. But it's impossible to know because they could have released these older hostages to make us think that, and then 10 minutes from now they say, look, we have these, and because they want to keep some sort of position to keep Israel from coming in with a strong blitz of an attack. So they said, no, we still have hostages here to cause us not to pounce.
You know, I'd like to at some point find a psychologist of some sort that could, because I feel like this war, everything about this has been such a psychological war. In so many ways. I mean, we've seen a lot of physical things. Yeah, October 7th was it was a real deal that happened. But the war that's been waged on Israel since then has been this psychological drama that I feel like the whole nation has just been at the whims of the barbaric reality that exists in Hamas. And I believe the Bibas family, they've used that such an evil entity that has used this family and has killed this family, but through and has brought the whole nation of Israel on this traumatic, like, are they alive or are they okay? We're talking about a baby, but they did that in such an evil way that I would love to at some point find somebody that is like, what is going on here? Because I feel like they know what they're doing, very strategic about this. Very and they know what they're doing on this. They're trying to traumatize every Western civilized person.
Well, I think the psychological analysis that you want to do needs to be on the leadership of Israel. That's who Hamas is dealing with, not the nation, because you go up to anyone in the street and everybody feels the same righteous indignation. But the leadership of Israel, I've never felt such a disconnect between a dissonance, let's say, between the leadership of the country and the nation as a whole. My heart is breaking about what's happening right now. There's overwhelming grief, but shock. The prime minister is saying, we're shocked. Where's the shock? You know, on October 7th, there was 9-month-old Mila Cohen was murdered. 2-year-old Omer Simantov was found burned along with his 5-year-old sister, right? It's something like 10 to 15. It's hard to know because it was such a devastation. Children were brutally murdered. We've seen it on video, executing children, and we're shocked about this. Right. The Fogel family.
Right. Just locally right here. I mean, I was here. That was a number of years ago now.
2011. Yeah.
11, and we were here for that. And I thought that what an atrocious. I
want to talk about that because there's an amazing write-up by an activist here in Israel named her name's Ayelet Lash, and I'm reading a couple of quotes from that. But before we get into that, before we started the show today, we were kind of talking about like how do we really convey like what's happening in Israel and the feeling of everyone's hearts that are torn in two today in Israel, but how do we also not dwell on the. I mean, it's so sad, like so incredibly sad. But I think it's important. A couple of things are very important, and I think the reason, like you were saying, Ari, like babies were murdered in the most horrific way on October 7th, right? But right now, the barbarism is so sinking into the world's consciousness because we're seeing these babies that were in captivity for 500 days now being returned in coffins. And like, if you can see their photos and their videos, of these children, right? And the innocence of this family. And I think the just how brutally barbaric Hamas and civilians of Gaza. I mean, I almost feel like we should stop saying Hamas because we're talking about every single person, civilian inside of Gaza.
70% of those that actually infiltrated the country and pillaged and burned and murdered, 70% of them were civilians. And people say, how long will these innocent civilians be under Hamas's rule? They voted for them overwhelmingly, with the charter of Hamas being the annihilation and genocide of all the Jewish people. Right. What more do you need to say than this is a society that is so thoroughly like Sodom? Right.
Let's
at a certain point,
any hostage that's come out of Gaza, any soldier that's served in Gaza in the last year and a half, they will tell you there are no innocent civilians in Gaza. We just interviewed an Israeli soldier who was one of the first D9 commanders to roll into Gaza after October 7th. His perspective, there's no innocent civilians inside of Gaza, right? So just to let this sink in, like it's important for people to understand this. The pictures, like I said, as we're filming, the coffins are coming out of Gaza and being turned over to the IDF. As we're filming this, if you guys are watching, it took place, just a couple of hours ago. There are photos coming out of Gaza of a stage set up with a ceremony and a backdrop and chairs being set up, and there's pictures of adults holding their toddlers and their babies. There's pictures of little children inside Gaza coming to this ceremony to watch the bodies of Israeli babies who were murdered in captivity being released back into Israel. That's how sickening this whole situation is. And that's why there are not innocent civilians inside of Gaza. This is a culture of hate and death. It's a culture of glorifying violence.
Today reminds me of...
if you're looking for a way to get more directly connected to the land and the people of Israel right now, I want to give our full endorsement here at the Israel Guys to the Land of Israel Fellowship. You guys have gotten to know Rabbis Jeremy Gimpel and Aryeh Bramowitz through the show right here every week since we started back in January. But you can actually get directly connected to these guys and the incredible organization they run deep in the heart of the hills of Judea, by the way, every single week. You can also get connected to their amazing spouses. It's the Land of Israel Fellowship. Hundreds of people join them for about an hour, I think, every single week. On the Land of Israel Fellowship, they study Torah, study prayer. It's Christians, Jews, people of all faiths coming together once a week on a virtual fellowship. And it's an amazing, amazing time. And you guys have our full endorsement. We'll put a link down in the description below. The Land of Israel Fellowship at thelandofisrael.com. Please consider joining. I think it's only like $25 a month. And that's a way you can directly connect to the people of Israel in the land of Israel, in the heart of Israel. And it's an action that you can take right now to show your public stance with the nation of Israel and to be directly connected to the people of Israel so that you can become an ambassador and an authority on what's going on to better advocate and be an ambassador for Israel today. Join the Land of Israel Fellowship at thelandofisrael.com. Link in the description below.
Today reminds me of the pain that was felt on October 7th when we realized what was happening. And it's all coming back today because what we're experiencing today is that horror again. How could we have lost such a beautiful family? We had hope that they would come back, that they would somehow be brought out of this misery and be brought back. There was a clip I saw this week from a guy in Australia, it was Sky News or something like that, that gave me a little bit of hope, and it went viral here in Israel because this is not just a Jewish thing. The world around is, you remember like right when October 7th happened, the attack happened, there was so many people around the world that all of a sudden they had just a tiny bit of sympathy and like, what? They did what to you? And unfortunately, it didn't last. But
yeah,
hardly any time
the
at
minute
all.
that happened, everyone was saying, "Oh, the world is with us," and they finally understand. I put out a video that day. I was like, "This is not going to last more than a week."
No, and it didn't.
Meaning, there's a certain affection I think that much of the world has for dead Jews.
But I want to play this clip because it gave me a little bit of hope that there are people out there that when they see this, they say that's just evil. There are people out there, and in the free world. There's people in Australia. I mean, Australia is going crazy now with all this terrible anti-Israel stuff going on. But there's even people there that see this. They say that is evil.
All right, let's play the clip.
Play it.
Here it is reported by the BBC. Hamas announcing it is to return 4 bodies of hostages. Hamas says it will hand over the bodies of 4 hostages on Thursday, including the 2 youngest people held by the Palestinian armed group. The group's negotiator, Khalil al-Hayya, said the bodies to be released would include those of the Bibas family, Shiri, and her young children, Kfir and Ariel, who were aged 9 months and 4 years when Hamas kidnapped them during the 7th of October 2023 attack. The dead bodies of this young mother and her 2 infant sons are to be returned. This is the horrific news we have been dreading since the very first hours of this trauma.
So what I would say is I'm not sure that it's the entire world. I think that the binary here is between light and darkness, good and evil. I mean, the fact that within this land, we see the juxtaposition, the contrast between the nation of Israel, which perhaps loves and values and cherishes life as precious beyond anyone else in the world, to those that worship death. And we're going head to head right there. That has to be orchestrated by a creator. And I think that this man on Sky News that we just saw, I would be willing to bet that he's a Christian, an evangelical, pro-Israel Christian. And what is it that is causing his moral clarity and his heartbreak? It's a love for the God of Israel, the God of light and the God of love and the God of compassion and the God of truth. Whereas we see there's plenty of people out there in this world of ours that don't feel that way. And I think a lot of it really has to do, the Prime Minister said, our hearts are broken in Israel and the whole world's heart should be broken. The whole world's heart should be, we're constantly trying to say to the world, please feel this way, please love us, please have compassion for us. It's this sort of exile, ghetto mentality of turning to the world and needing the world to support us and to love us. I mean, there's so much of that. I think that's really what we see happening here. What did Israel do for thousands of years? Let's say the Ashkenazim that were in European countries. There would be a periodic pogrom, and they would come in and murder and slaughter and rape and kidnap. And then after they kidnapped, they would reach out to the Jewish community and say, we have these people, and the Jewish community would then negotiate financially or whatever to get the hostages back. And we're just continuing in that way as far as the leadership of Israel is concerned. But the nation of Israel, I don't think we're there. I think all of this is happening to us. I don't know why exactly God is doing it, but I believe that it has something to do with waking us up from our 2,000-year-old coma that we've been in, really like breaking open our hearts, doing something to shatter our hearts in a way that, you know what, it reminds me of the backstory of Hanukkah. Do you know the backstory of Hanukkah? Here's in one sentence, right? Maybe a little bit more than that. There was Hannah, the daughter of the high priest, and she was about to be married. Now, this is a time where the Greek Seleucid Empire, in order to degrade the Jewish family, demoralize the Jewish people, they said prima nocta, which is that every Jewish woman that's married is violated by a Greek commander, legionnaire, whatever, the night of her wedding. And it was the night of Hannah, the daughter of Matityahu, the high priest of Israel. And at her wedding feast ceremony, she stood up and she dropped her robe and she was naked. And the high priest and all the Israelites were there like, oh, and she's like, what? You're so upset? I'm about to be violated by this uncircumcised Greek Seleucid heathen, and you're so upset? And it says that sparked this outrage, this righteous indignation and this fury in the hearts of the Maccabees that started the Hanukkah revolt. What is it going to take for the nation of Israel to say to the leadership, you're done. You're done. We're not saying anything bad about you. Maybe you're well-intentioned, but you don't get it. where there's an awakening happening. You know, I just saw this picture, if you could put it up on the screen, of these soldiers in Jenin.
Right, where they put up the flag and the whole team's there surrounded.
Yeah, so the sign above it in Jenin, it says, "Where have all the heroes gone?" That was the Hamas sign. And the soldiers put up a sign from the Quran that says, "As if they were frightened donkeys fleeing from a lion." Right, from the Quran. What are they saying there? We are lions. The nation feels that we're lions that are ready to pounce, and we're being shackled by these exiled Jews that are in the deep state and in all of the positions of leadership. And we're so thirsty for for David to replace Saul. That's where we're at in history.
Yeah,
I want to read something. I think this really encompasses what's happening in Israel and why, and it's been happening for decades, and it's basically, how is the same cycle being perpetuated? There's a right-wing activist here in Israel. She's a writer, Ayelet Lash. I want to read some quotes from what she said. She says, "The Bibas family is a symbol of this massacre. Their stories gripped everyone because it's the story of an entire family, of a mother and babies. When people see pictures of the Bibas family surrounded by terrorists, they are ready to destroy all of Gaza and its inhabitants at once, because there's a limit to evil, they say. And here I raise a painful point. If the Israeli public had not turned a blind eye to the cruelty of the Arab enemy, the Bibas family would be at home today. But the Israeli public, with an emphasis on the media that still mediates reality to people, has consciously chosen all these years to ignore, because it was about other people, far from sight and heart, a direct path that led the Arabs to commit a massacre against us." And I think as she goes on, and I want to talk about this, to compare this to the Fogel family massacre, because the idea is that we ignore one incident that happens. And in most cases, it's been terrorist attacks that have happened in Judea and Samaria. The one particular story she talks about took place a couple of miles from where we're sitting right now. And we were both here in this exact spot in 2011 when it happened. And remember waking up the next morning and hearing about the horrific attack. A lot of people have heard about it because it's so horrific. The Fogel family massacre happened March 11th, 2011. Two terrorists, ages 18 and 19, snuck into Itamar, which is in Samaria, just as the bird flies, a couple of miles from where we're sitting right now, broke into a family's home on Shabbat. They go in and they stab to death the two parents and three of the children. Even they were leaving, locked the door from the inside and leaving, and they hear a baby crying. They go back in and kill the baby. And it's only by God's grace that two of the children slept through it, and the other daughter was not at home at the time, and so there's three survivors. But like a horrific, just barbaric attack. And so what Ayelet Lash is saying is that nothing was done, right, after the Fogel family massacre. Okay, maybe some homes were built, right? Because that's typically like the best case scenario that happens. A horrific massacre happens in Judea and Samaria. Maybe the terrorist home is demolished, which I don't think was happening in 2011. It's happening today. And maybe some Jewish homes were built in response, but that's it. The nation of Israel doesn't respond with a strong hand to the forces of evil.
Even to the point where those terrorists are sit in jail and get an education, and they've sat there. Literally, the terrorists that you're talking about that committed this massive massacre are just sitting in Israeli prison waiting to be released now.
Yeah, and I think that the Jews of Israel have already woken up to something that the rest of the Western world is going to wake up to soon, unfortunately, which is that they would say, well, the Fogel family, they live in Judea and Samaria. What are they living there for? Right. They're putting themselves, exposing themselves. That's on them. Really, but since then, since October 7th, I personally have overwhelmingly felt, and polls are showing also, that there is a deep love and appreciation on behalf of those very Israelis that used to blame the settlements and say they have it coming. Why are they so ideological? And now they understand that the settlements are the tip of the spear in defending them and keeping Nahariya and Ra'anana and Tel Aviv from being October 7th. And I think a lot of the Western world, it's like, well, that's what you get for living in the Middle East. That same attitude, the jihad is coming for them. It's coming for them. You would
say the Israeli public's woken up, but the leadership of Israel has not sufficiently woken up.
That's exactly what I would say. That's exactly what I would say. I just want to read one more thing. This is from Almog Cohen, who talks about, he wrote this, in 2004, my family members, Tali Chatuel, You remember this? Who was 8 months pregnant, and her daughters, Hila, Hadar, Roni, and Meirav, were brutally murdered in the Kisufim area, which is near Gaza, with an evil cruelty that humanity has difficult digesting. They were dressed in orange, the color of the struggle against the expulsion from Gush Katif, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was the orange was like the color.
Right.
But since then, everyone has managed to forget them. 19 years later, on that damned morning, the martyred Bibas family, the same enemy, the same cruelty, the same pure evil, and the same color of the struggle, orange, right? They were a family of redheads, cries out before our eyes, do not forget us. Right? He says, revenge is the most moral and humane thing, because this time we must not forget. You know, it's just the outrage of what we're doing. Hillel Beton said this, the deal with the Hamas, this is what it is. Essentially, tomorrow, the state of Israel will receive the bodies of a baby, a woman, and an elderly man, and in exchange for them, it will release at the demand of those who kidnapped and murdered them, other murderers who have murdered like them in the past.
And we'll murder again.
And we'll murder again.
I think a lot of people know Ari Fold. He was a friend of yours, even, and we know some of his family today. He was murdered by I think he was 16 years old, 16-year-old terrorist several years ago. That terrorist is about to be released as part of this exchange. Ari's brother Eitan had this to say. He said, "We are certainly happy about every hostage who returns home, like the rest of Israel is. The most enormous pain regarding the release of Ari's murder is not a pain only about the loss of justice, and not only about the fact that he ruined our family, but mostly about the families who will suffer from the mass release of these prisoners." And I think this right here really encompasses what's going on. He says, "I am pained ahead of time from the funerals which I know I will go to as a bereaved brother, because the terrorists will return to terrorize and murder Jews and Israelis." I think that's exactly because, and it's happened over and over and over and over and over again. The terrorists who were released as part of the 2011 Gilad Shalit deal went straight back to terrorism. Many of them captured by Israel's forces once again. Any terrorists who are released right now are going to go straight back to terrorism.
But that's not even, that's a small percentage. Just yesterday, there was an elderly woman walking peacefully through the Jewish quarter where it's supposed to be safe of the old city of Jerusalem, and she was hacked near, it looks like she's going to die, hacked with an axe from a jihadi Arab, and they're saying, oh, it was criminal and it wasn't terror, like in the insanity of that statement. Why is he doing that? Because he's going to be released in 2 weeks.
Right.
Well, there's a whole world of terrorists that are being incentivized to kidnap and to murder, because it doesn't matter how, you know how many murderers, how many Jews were murdered by those who are being released right now? 155. Wow. 155 Jews, men, women, children murdered, and those murderers are being released as millionaires for murdering.
Well, and educated, you know, like they
well-fed, educated,
5-star prisons.
Which should also be noted right now that everybody is going to be like, well, they stopped the pay to slay program and they're not going to be paying those terrorists.
No, they didn't.
They didn't stop that. And they maybe will come up with some sort of guise.
There's an investigation going on right now, and I haven't gotten all the details because apparently it's undercover. But I spoke to some people. I said, when this comes out, we want to bring it out on the Israel Guys show. But we're talking about Israeli government officials, about how the funds have just been rerouted.
Yeah.
So terrorists will never stop being paid. As long as there's a Palestinian Authority, as long as there's Fatah, Hamas, the terrorists who are sitting in Israeli prisons will not stop being paid for the deeds that they did to kill Jews.
I mean, the low bar that they have been so successful at setting for themselves. Wow, you stopped the payments, which isn't even true, but the theory that you stopped paying murderers for murdering. And this is the
We're talking
moderates.
About a lot of money.
That's the moderates.
About a small amount of money.
And more than that, to achieve your number one goal in your so-called statehood. Their whole, their number one charter for their existence as a so-called state is to annihilate Israel. And then when they pay their so-called citizens to do so, to achieve their number one goal, obviously that's what their whole entity is built upon, is annihilating Jewish presence from the ancient Jewish homeland. It's like the enemy. It's like these proxy groups of the whole Arab world. They're all working together to achieve this goal of ridding Jews from the entire land of Israel. And now I think the whole world's just, again, today they're shocked. Again, like we said earlier, a week from now they'll probably forget about it because they're not truly caring unless they're a part of that Abrahamic people that you mentioned. Right. And that Abrahamic people, the people that look to Abraham as that root and that foundation, that's probably the people listening right now. they've got to do something, and they've got to be active. The people in Israel are moving forward. I believe that it's just a matter of time. It's so hard to walk in a day like this. We're all like really positive people around this round table here today, and it's hard to walk through a day like today when it looks like we're going backwards. We're releasing terrorists that killed innocent Jews back into the wild to go out and to be completely free to then attack Jews again. It's a hard thing.
So let me just try to inspire you and uplift you, because there's an idea in Judaism, yerida letzorech aliyah, going down in order to go up. Sometimes you need to hit a crash in order to really go up. You know, there's a psalm, Aromimcha Hashem ki dilitani, right? Raise me up, O God, for you have lowered me. And the word for dilitani is from dli, which means a bucket. And it's like a bucket that goes into a well, and it goes deeper, darker, deeper, darker. But when it comes up, it has water in it, meaning that there's something we need to get from this depths, or that is sparks of light that we need to raise up as a nation. And right now, that's what we're experiencing and feeling. But we have to understand that the Saul is on his way out, and the David is on his way in, and you can tell that that's the case from looking at the nation of Israel. We're returning to God. We're returning to faith. We have these different spiritual leaders that are coming out. I just saw this, Rav Moshe Sternbuch. He warns against placing trust in the President Trump and instead placing trust in God. Any thought about a big army, a big air force, or the thought that we are very strong, nothing can come of it, he says. The only thing we have is Hashem, and the future redemption will only occur when we recognize that no one can help us except God himself. Today, many people trust a new president in America and think that he will help us. But you need to know that these people are hindering the coming of Mashiach. Only when we understand that Hashem is the only power that can help us. From the president of America, we will not be saved. Only then will God bring salvation.
Well, I'm reading the book of Judges right now in the Bible, and like this is the history of the Jewish people and the nation of Israel for, 4,000 years, right? Is when Israel turned away from God, they were delivered into the hands of their enemies. But when the entire nation cried out to God for help, God stepped in and saved them. It does not matter how dire it was, does not matter what the situation was, does not matter how big or strong their enemies were. If the nation of Israel called out to God with one voice for deliverance, then God delivered them every single time. And we know for a fact that that can still happen today.
I mean, it's actually things like this, like the Bibas funerals that are happening today, that the heavens are weeping right now. You know, the rain is so overwhelming, and the entire nation is weeping, and it brings about a unity amongst the nation of Israel. Maybe it's fleeting and it doesn't last as long as it should, but we're all together in heartbrokenness, and there's an auspicious spiritual opportunity there. And like you said, this is the story of the nation of Israel. And so for us to look at Hamas and to get lost in hatred for Hamas without recognizing that when a man beats a dog with a stick, the dog bites at the stick. Like, we have to say, what is the message God is sending us? How should we react to this in a way that will bring us closer to him and serve him and fear only him? You know, even the destruction of the temple, Nebuchadnezzar, God's in the book of Daniel says, Nebuchadnezzar, my servant, his servant. He sent Nebuchadnezzar. When we sit on the 9th of Av and we mourn, we never talk about the Romans or the Greeks. We don't talk about that. We talk about our own sins and our own faithlessness. That's what this is really about. There's an inner searching and waking up that's happening, and that's the story that nobody's hearing, is that's really happening here in Israel. You guys have a special perspective to see it because you're here in the hills of Samaria. You're connected with the nation of Israel in a unique way. Do you see that? Are you seeing that?
Yeah, I think for us, I think we're as a non-Jew that's here, that's like, we're definitely seeing that. We're seeing God's hand at work. Like, there's no doubt about it. The return of the Jewish people back to this land is an absolute miracle that's never happened in any other people group, no other time frame in history have we ever seen the miraculous move of God that's happening here in the land of Israel. It's like there's these two things are happening at once right now. We're seeing that complete evil, the most depravity, the most evil thing on planet Earth. We're witnessing it today, how evil it is. At the same time, at the same exact moment, that evil is causing Jews around the world to say, we've got to come back to the land of Israel. That the depravity of that means that I'm not safe anywhere in this entire world as a Jew anymore. There's a land and people of Israel that's back, and that's fulfillment of the God story over here that says, all the Jewish people from around the world are going to come back and build this beautiful nation that's going to restore the kingdom of Israel back as like biblical times. That's what we're living in, these two things, and we're right in the middle of it. Like you said, the building of the kingdom of Israel, like a King David, King Saul, kind of like the Bible is just being, it's like the scribe could be writing now. I really feel that way, we're living in a biblical moment now. And as I talk about that biblical moment, I believe right now, in that transition I feel that Israel's in, that's what you're saying too, is that I don't yet believe, we're obviously not there yet. We're still seeing a lot of hardship. I believe the Arab people are looking at this whole situation much more in a spiritual lens than the Jewish nation is right now. And I'll clarify that. The Arabs are all looking at the Temple Mount. They're all calling this war the Al-Aqsa flood. We've talked about this on the channel many times.
A lot of people don't understand because like they don't understand how it could be connected. But it's like the Arabs are not hiding it. It's just it's not being portrayed in the Western media or the Western world.
Just yesterday, I was over. We were doing a project and next to where the red heifer site is. They've got these red heifers. You guys remember back at the beginning of the war, the Hamas spokesman, it looks like some kind of ridiculous cartoon character, something all covered up and talks like a VeggieTales guy. Just a ridiculous thing. But he literally sits there all covered up and says, we attacked the Jews, in Arabic he's saying, we attacked them because they got the red cows. Like literally says that. The Arab world around us is looking at this whole thing, and they're more scared. They're not scared of Trump and Bibi and this. They didn't say the war was because maybe Trump was going to win and they needed to attack now while Biden was in. That wasn't the reason. It would have been a great reason probably, right? There's a weak moment and we want to attack Israel in this weak moment when they don't have good global support. Yeah, that would have been sounded like, but that's not what he said. He said, we're attacking them because they got these red cows. Literally, that was like in the first couple minutes of his first thing, his first big response was, Israel is getting close to becoming a holy people, recognizing their connection to God, and that scares them.
The only reason for the red heifers is for the temple to be built and for the Jewish people to be able to worship God in Jerusalem at the Holy Temple.
But no Jewish person would have said that.
What did Hamas call the October 7th onslaught? The Al-Aqsa flood, right? Overrunning the Temple Mount. That's their goal.
So you have to understand, these people that we're dealing with are idolaters. Mm-hmm. Not only idolaters in the sense that they're offering up their children to blow themselves up, just like Molech from the Bible with the child sacrifice, but idolaters because they are inherently fearful people. Mm-hmm. And the sages of Israel say that fear is essentially idolatry. Why is fear idolatry? Because it's saying, I'm afraid something will happen that shouldn't happen. But when you know that everything that happens is from God, for us, and orchestrated by God, then you could be walking through the valley of the shadow of death, and you will fear no evil because God is with us. And what is their greatest fear? The redemption, the God of Israel coming back into the world. And so when they see the Jewish ascension to the Temple Mount going up and up and up, and our consciousness is awaking, and we're returning to the land, and we're bringing in the red heifers, they're so terrified of that redemption that they preemptively launched the October 7th attack because they're terrified of that. Yeah. But the sages tell us that when you have a fear, and you don't neutralize that fear with faith or trust, and you allow that fear to nurture in your heart, you will maximize the probability of that fear manifesting itself. Yeah. Like a plank across this room. We could walk across the plank very easily. Put it between two tall buildings, we're going to fall. And so what they don't realize is that their attacks against us are actually catalyzing the redemption that they're so afraid of. They're bringing us together. They're waking us up. They're sparking and awakening that heart of a lion within the entire nation of Israel. And they're doing it because they're so afraid of it.
Talk about that heart of a lion that I sense is also happening here, especially in the region that you and I both live in Judea and Samaria. I was just talking to a friend down in the Shiloh area yesterday. And she said this, and this is the reason why I'm bringing this up, because we need to, where are we going from here? We've had a really down day today. What happens from here? Where is this leading? Are we just going to keep going like this? Or is that lion going to get up and move something out of the way? And are the enemies going to flee like in a biblical time? Are we going to make that biblical move forward where Israel then is a free people in its own land? And she suggested, and Ari, I want to get your feedback on this. She suggested that the Temple Mount needs to be connected to this war on the Jewish side. The Jewish people need to realize that was the reason for the war, That's the reason why the enemies are attacking, and they need to connect the fact that that's why they attacked and start using that in this whole thing. And she suggested, she said, well, what if we started doing all of our negotiations, which negotiations in our minds is probably a bad thing to start anyway. You don't negotiate with your worst enemies. The Temple Mount needs to be a part of this thing. If they do something wrong, no access to the Temple Mount. Now you're speaking something that actually hurts them, because they, as you say all the time, Ari, they don't care if they die. That's actually what they want. All these terrorists, they want to die. And then they're shaheeds, and they get their big, prize in heaven. What a idiotic religion and thought. But hit them where it really hurts, and that's their connection to the Temple Mount, and it's their obstruction of the idea that that house is to be a house of prayer for all nations. It's a place. It's the global redemption process that they're squarely opposing.
Their obstruction.
Like
we conquered the Temple Mount.
You did.
Like this right now, we could have the entire walk off the Temple Mount.
Oh, yeah.
They are, on some level, the prime minister and these leftist sort of exiled Jewish leadership need them. They need Hamas to be that enemy to be foiled against, because they don't have something proactively that they want. What is their aspiration? And so that's why I'm against this idea, respectfully pushing back. You don't use the Temple Mount, which has been the focus and of the yearning and the prayer and the tears of the nation of Israel since time immemorial. We don't use that as a tool to punish them with. Our approach to the Temple Mount needs to be from a place of burning desire to build the temple and bring God's light into the world. Yeah. The irony is, these Hamas people, if they only understood the blessing that the temple would be for them, they would be helping us build it. But it needs to be coming from us. What do we really need to do? Probably going to get YouTube, but we need to understand that when the Talmud says, he who is merciful to the evil in the end will be evil to the merciful, we need to directly go and take, instead of releasing these thousands of terrorists, we need to take the top 12 murderers with the...
even in America, they take, there's punishment for these kind of evils. Have you ever heard of somebody releasing like a top
not only that, we did brain surgery for free on Sinwar to say, when you take any attribute and you take it to an absurd, twisted degree, it becomes evil. Even a good, beautiful attribute like mercy, if you are merciful to such a degree, it becomes a perverse. We need to have a balance of attributes, and the Jewish people have a predisposition for compassion and mercy. And if we don't temper that with understanding that the calling is for us to overcome our natural predisposition and go for justice. You have to understand, I'm a medical clown, right? I go to hospitals to make kids laugh. Yeah. I'm dressed as a clown. I don't care if it's little Joseph or little Jihad or little Moshe or little Mohammed. I love all humanity. I really do. That's not something I've worked on.
I think you're joking that the Arabs would name their children Jihad, but like,
no, of course.
Real.
No, that's a real
there's
name.
A lot of jihads.
It's a real name.
A real name. But the point is, though, that I have a natural love for humanity that God created me with. I didn't need to work on it. It just is. And it's from that love of humanity that is very, very strong within me that I understand we need to wipe them out.
Well, the question is, and we're talking about, I mean, regardless of what the details are, we're talking about like capital punishment, right? Israel actually did inflict capital punishment on Adolf Eichmann, right? One of the leaders of the Nazis in the Holocaust. The question is, what's the difference between the 16-year-old Arab that murdered Ari Fold and Adolf Eichmann?
I'll give you the difference. I'll tell you the difference
between the 18 and the 19-year-old who massacred the Fogel family in Itamar in 2011 and Adolf Hitler.
I'll give you an example. What's the difference between Eichmann and Hamas? I'll tell you. The difference is that Hamas is worse than the Nazis. Exactly. Because the Nazis at least had enough of a moral compass to hide it.
Right.
They hid their genocide. Hamas broadcasted it to the world. There's a level of sick evil where they have actually taken this evil and brought it to a worship. They brought it to a worship of this pagan sun god that people conflate. Well, they have one God, so it must be our God. No, I don't think it's our God because, there's no way to worship a God that is so sick, twisted, distorted, and evil that cutting the breasts off of a Jewish mother, putting a baby into the oven, and you rape the mother to cry the baby, and that's their worship? That's their worship, and you're going to say that's the God of Israel?
Well, a lot of people talk about the house of prayer for all nations that Isaiah talks about, the rebuilt temple, right? And some people think, all religions will be able to come up. I'll stay out of the religion part, but no one is coming up to worship at the house of prayer for all nations except to worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I think that's the bottom line. And so that, like, yes, 100%. And two, I was going to say, I think the bottom line of this entire thing is Israel's still reacting. 500 days after October 7th, they're still reacting. And obviously, we don't know the complexities of how many hostages are alive, how many are dead inside Gaza. If Israel unleashes all hell, does that endanger the hostages that are there? Obviously, they're already in fear, already in horrific danger. We don't know those complexities, right? But Israel is reacting, and the bottom line is they need to move to a proactive level. And I think that's what you always say, Ari, about how Israel is still under Saul, and they're looking for King David to come and reign, right? We're looking for that. Like, the people of Israel are almost there. The nation of Israel is turning to God. Even the people that experienced October 7th, the majority of them were secular leftists, right? Because that's who lived along the Gaza border. Even one of the gentlemen whose body is being released from Gaza today, he was a left-wing peace activist who worked with Arabs inside of Gaza, right? What happened in the end? They came and murdered him. But after October 7th, these people are turning back to God. People, secular Israelis, former hostages, people who are at the Nova Festival, they're lighting candles on Shabbat. They're praying. They're becoming, they're turning to God in so many ways. And I think it's just it is a sign of where the nation of Israel's at. And what you're saying, Ari, is that the leadership of Israel needs to follow suit. We're looking for King David. So just to kind of wrap up this whole awful day and what's going to happen this weekend, is my question is, as Israel receives 6 more hostages on Saturday, as this fraudulent ceasefire ends very soon, is Israel going to now unleash all hell on Hamas, or are they going to say, okay, time for round 2? I think laughably, a Hamas spokesman has already come out and said that Hamas is ready to negotiate phase 2 of the ceasefire, which should be the permanent ceasefire where all hostilities end with Gaza and the IDF complete withdraws. I think that's just hilariously laughable, because obviously they're scared to death. And hopefully what will happen is that Israel refuses and they unleash all hell, and Hamas is finished in a matter of hours.
Luke, can I say something? This may sound like a bombshell kind of the thing, but it's just the truth, and this is not being spoken about anywhere. Nobody's talking about this, but it's the reality. Israel all along, and Ari, you follow up with this because you're actually in IDF uniform. You're part of the IDF. But this is something that's not been broken to the world. We've talked about it a little bit here, but it's becoming clearer every single day. And has Israel just been fighting Hamas in Gaza all this time? The answer is 100% no. The big answer is no. Everybody says, if I said right now, oh, well, it's Iran has backed them, everyone would say, of course, we know that. They're backed by Iran. But when I tell you Egypt has backed them, everybody goes, Egypt? What? Egypt is not a player in this thing that's just sitting back.
And by the way, who's backing Egypt now?
Right.
How about the Chinese?
How about
Air
the
Force
Chinese sending jets now, because America is backing off from Egypt. America did big time business with Egypt and really built that crazy military that Egypt has a much more jets than Israel does. Like, they have a massive military.
And they are amassing that military right now for war with Israel. This war is inevitable. What Israel needs to do is understand where this is going, face it for once in our lives, not delude ourselves and not stick our head in the sand. We need to preempt what is clearly coming our way.
Yeah.
We need to conquer Egypt. We need to say to America, you want Gaza? We appreciate the sentiment. This is the land of Israel that God gave us. We're going to settle it. You can have the Suez Canal.
Which, by the way, Trump would be fine with.
Because Trump would be fine with
whatever Israel decides, whatever Netanyahu decides, the U.S. will back.
Yeah, we see that the Panama Canal thing is not working out great for him. They deserve the Suez Canal. We give that to America. But right now, what I think is going to happen, which is probably worth 0, but I'm just saying from my understanding of how this is all coming together, is that Egypt is preparing for a war against Israel. And this time, I think a lot of the Arab countries are saying, let's learn from what happened October 7th.
Yeah.
If only Iran and Hezbollah and everybody pounced at the same time in the same day.
Boom.
And I think that we're facing something like that that is going to be massive. And I'm not sure that America, because Trump, bottom line is America first, which is legitimate.
Yeah.
It's legitimate, and I'm not sure that America will be there. And so this moment of absolute breaking of the hearts of Israel, where we're looking around saying, what chance do we have? We have, just against Egypt alone would be a devastating war against Israel. That would be almost the definition of a Pyrrhic victory, that like we may emerge victorious, but at a price that is unimaginable,
Right.
let alone the entirety, China and Russia, and what are we going to do?
Right.
And so I
everybody's
think
looking at
that,
you.
yeah.
Everybody's looking at you right now and saying, you idiots. They're just putting the whatever hundreds of tanks and massing their military there, so a couple 100,000, maybe a 1.5 million Gazans don't come over into Egypt. Okay, who's the idiot here? They're not massing their incredible forces because of Gaza.
There was 200 tunnels under the Philadelphia corridor going into Egypt.
Without Egypt, it would not have been possible.
How do we know that? Because we stood on the Philadelphia corridor just a couple of months ago.
Luke and I literally were on the Philadelphia corridor there. We went there. 200 tunnels, and guys, those tunnels, Luke, you got to emphasize this.
Tunnels that trucks can drive
I
through.
remember serving there, and I remember hearing digging going on under the base, and I told them, and they're like, yeah, okay, we'll report it. And then I think it was like 3 weeks after I left that base, it was actually one of those tunnels were detonated under the base, killing like 8 soldiers. And we're turning a blind eye. That's what we do.
And this was not yesterday this happened. We did extensive research on these tunnels. The first tunnels were started to be dug from Egypt into Gaza, right? The other way around. Not Gaza out to Egypt. Gaza into all the way back into 1983, right after the peace agreement was signed. Israel had fully pulled out of the Sinai, and Egypt started to get this underground connection. So, guys, here's the big breaking.
And by the way, I just want to say one thing before the breaking. It's important for Israel to also recognize that we use this prototype of saying, well, look how wonderful the peace treaty was with Egypt, the Begin signed to give back the Sinai, to take apart Yamit, which was a Jewish settlement in the Sinai, and pull those Jews that were settling the Sinai out of that land, and we look at that as a prototype of what's good.
Yeah.
No, that's not good. It just delayed what has become a massive, massive, massive force. Do they need all of those tanks against these innocent, unarmed civilians of Gaza? It's 4 times the amount.
Yeah.
They're by treaty allowed to amass on the border with Israel, essentially saying to Israel, we don't care about that treaty, and we challenge you to go try to do something about it.
Right. I would say here's the big breaking point is that you should not look at Gaza, all these Arab Gazans, no, and these Egyptians over here, no. The Gazans are fighting Egypt's war against an historic enemy of Egypt. Egypt is no pro-Israel entity. They never have been. Read your Bible, for goodness sakes. I mean, the Egyptian story with Israel is kind of bad all the way through. And even in modern history, even though it's a different historic time, still, Egypt is no friend of Israel. A peace treaty means when we sense that you're weak enough, that's Arab mentality, when we sense that you're weak enough, we'll come in and we'll attack, just like they did in the 6 Day War. They started it. And literally we're at the moment right now where Egypt has tried to weaken Israel through a proxy. And it's not just Iran's proxy. Egypt is funneled through 200 tunnels. All that they needed for years and years and years since the 80s has been funneling this war that broke on October 7th.
I just want to say an idea that just hit me right now that is so over. I almost want to cry. It feels to me so compelling, is that there's a deep belief in Jewish philosophy in the heart of the nation of Israel that the final redemption will reflect or be a projection of an initial redemption from Egypt, right? The final redemption will be. And just as the nation of Israel was facing the sea with nowhere to turn and no hope in turning back, as the Egyptian cavalry behind them was closing in, and they saw no hope and nowhere. Who will help us? Who will come to our aid? And they turned to God, and then that redemption happened. I think that this redemption, the final redemption of mankind that we're on the precipice of right now, we're in the same exact position. The Egyptian cavalry is right there. Yeah. And there is going to be nobody that is going to come to our
this
aid.
Even bigger? As you're talking, who did the Egyptian kill? They killed the boys.
The babies.
The babies. That's the atrocity of today. Egypt, through this Gaza thing, killed the children of Israel, just like they did in the Bible story. This is the reality that Israel's facing today. Thank God we know the end of the story. Egypt didn't fare very well. And let's pray to God that he looks, I mean, we know through the Bible that God's eyes are never off this place. He's never left you.
Have the enemies of Israel ever fared well in the end of the story?
Not when they kill your children.
Because the enemies of Israel are the enemies of God. That's the bottom line. And the end of the story is that God's invitation is for all nations to come worship him in Jerusalem with the nation of Israel. But you have to align yourself with God. You have to align yourself with God's covenant and with God's people. You can't separate any of those things.
This is a time of history, like that beautiful song that you guys sang, not called The Line, I believe, with the line in the sand. This is the time where everybody has their opportunity, their maximum level of free will, to determine for themselves who do they stand with, not only with words, but in deed. And what's going to happen in the end is exactly what God said to the nation of Israel when they were finally had the faith to go so deep into the sea that it parted. Then God said, Hashem yilachem lachem v'atem tacharishun. God will do war for you and you will remain silent. Exactly what this rabbi said. The IDF, the powerful IDF, we've been humbled. We've been humbled from this powerful IDF thing as a bunch of Hamasnikim on motorcycles and hang gliders were able to bring us to our knees and nearly wipe out the entire southern part of Israel, right? We have been humbled, and now it's time. God is going to say, okay, I'm going to fight this war for you. We have to do our best, do everything in our power to step forth in faith. But ultimately, when we do that, God's going to do it.
I think it's so powerful what we're talking about here. As we wrap up, Luke, I just wanted to show people a little bit about what's going on in Egypt so they can believe what we're saying is true, that we showed in the mass buildup. But we also, there's more stuff happening smack on the border right there with Egypt. We've got to show you this clip. I mean, there's this unbelievable forces that are just training and doing all kinds of stuff. It's obvious that they're not doing this to take care of Egypt. There's obvious preparation for a war, and it's obvious that there's a war
I wanted to say,
faced
people
at
are
Israel.
seeing that. Like, we can show it on the screen, and we're obviously looking at like the Egyptian Air Force, I guess, even though these are like paragliders. What does this remind you of?
Yeah, October 7th.
October 7th, 100%, except probably a lot more sophisticated and well-funded and trained. This is the Egyptian army on the Gaza-Israel border. You got Egyptian soldiers, which, a lot of them, we were just talking about how 50,000 of the Gazans are actually Egyptian citizens, right? Dual citizens, right? Or some kind of residency, right? Like, what exactly is the difference here? You got basically terrorists, enemies of Israel, jumping out of paragliders on the Israel border there in the Sinai Peninsula. Can
I add to this a little bit, Luke? Because the King of Jordan just came out, because this is also a part of the story. King Abdullah II, he says, he tweeted this, X'd it, whatever we call that nowadays. He says, I reiterate Jordan's steadfast position against the displacement of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. This is the unified Arab position. I say that because he is very confident in saying, Mr. Trump, I want you to know that you're not just dealing with Jordan and our 12 million residents here.
Courage he has when he's not in the White House.
Right. He looked like a bumbling fool when he was trying to, Trump, but then when he gets back home,
he had to go back to the Arab world before he had the courage to say this.
There's an alliance that's happened. He understands the unified Arab position is that not one of those proxy war Hamas members is going to move from that point. And you better understand that you're going to rebuild Gaza, and it's going to be for our war machine against Israel. That's the unified Arab position. And that's not only his position. He's also talking about Egypt. It's a unified Arab position.
And that's why, to understand the Arab mind, Sisi, right, the president of Egypt, even if he knew that he would lose this war against Israel, he would still do it, because it is more important to him to be a strong leader that loses. That can be tolerated, but a weak leader that bends knee to America or to Israel and lets the Gazans in, he'll be assassinated. The street won't allow it. And so that's really what we're looking at there.
So I want to add one more layer to this, because you have the United Arab Front, and what is their rhetoric? they have their agenda, they have their talking points, and they're not only is the Arab world unified on this point, but they've also been able to unify their talking points with the entire leftist world. The BBC, when we talk about the Trump's plan, what do they call that? Ethnic cleansing. How can you ethnically cleanse a terrorist group that's hell-bent on destroying an entire people group? They're the ethnic cleansers. They want to destroy completely just because you're a Jew. They want to kill you. They flipped the whole thing on its head, and now they've convinced the BBC, who literally stated this because they said Egypt is now going to present a plan to Trump in line with their vision for a comprehensive vision of resettling Gaza and rebuilding Gaza with their same old plan. You know what their same old plan is? Is that we're going to create, it's going to be connected to the Palestinian Authority, and we're going to create this old thing. Thank God that's not happening. That will not happen. That thing is dead and gone. And I sure hope to God there's enough sane people in the world that will realize that thing that's an evil, Hitler-like machine that is October 7th proven, that will not happen again. You can't take a bunch of terrorists. It's like having the wolf watch the sheep. They've funded it in mass here in Judea and Samaria. They funded it in Gaza, and they let these terrorists, they funded these terrorists with this kind of ideology. We're going to help you fight those bad terrorists, and then they become the terrorist entity themselves, the Palestinian Authority.
I mean, the
That's
irony of this ethnic cleansing claim against Israel, just like we said, Moses, right? He was called the most arrogant, and he was the most humble man in the world. But the truth is, there's a little bit of truth to Israel ethnic cleansing. And what's that truth? That I personally was ethnically cleansed from Gaza. That's the only time it's ever happened, is where the Israeli government, here's an actual video. That was me and thousands of other Jews being carried out of Gaza because we were Jews in order to make the land totally Judenrein. Not one Jew was allowed to breathe or live in Gaza under and they're saying that we're ethnically cleansing. Like, the BBC is the example in my mind of those that are making it very clear where they stand and who they are with. And there will simply be, I wish everybody in the world well, but there is an idea of karma, attribute for attribute. And I believe that they will be paying the price of the very jihad that they're defending in a very real and personal way in the streets of England.
Guys, we have to wrap up. We're hitting this hour mark, but I guess I'll just say that, today, especially as people are watching, this already took place. The nation of Israel had a very difficult day, and our hearts are with the entire nation, and our hearts are with the people of Israel and what's happened today. But we're looking forward. We're looking towards strength. We're saying the people of Israel are ready, right? Even if, like you're saying, we're right on that edge of the Red Sea with the literal Egyptian army on Israel's borders at this very moment. Even if it gets worse, even if there's a united Arab front, the story has always gone, when Israel turns to God, God comes in and delivers them. So it doesn't matter how big, how strong, how many numbers, how many nations, 23 Arab nations, hundreds of millions of jihadis. It does not matter. The people of Israel are so close. They're right there. They're turning back to God. We're waiting for the leadership of Israel to reach that same level of strength and clarity, right? And I think we're only looking forward.
Yeah, with that, I would just like to leave with this thought. In the book of Psalms, they say, Ela berecha ve'ela basusim v'nachnu b'shem Hashem naskir. They may have horses and chariots, but we, with the name of the God of Israel, we shall be victorious. And that is the times that we're in right now. Yeah. That when we sing this song for generations, Am Yisrael Chai, the nation of Israel lives, David Melech Yisrael Chai v'kayam. King David, the king of Israel, is alive and thriving. Now, clearly, it's not King David himself, but King David's progeny. The future leader of Israel is alive and is soon to be taking a leadership role in this country. And it's just right now, from the outside, things may look dark and they're falling apart. But as the sages say, the chicken grows as the egg decays. From the outside, the egg is falling apart and decomposing, but a new life is coming forth, and a new life is coming forth in Israel. And this is the time to strengthen and fortify your faith. Everybody around the world, know, don't believe, but know that the God of Israel will come to the salvation and the redemption of his nation of Israel and the entire world. We're up for good times. It may be darker. It's darkest before dawn.
That's right.
But don't lose faith during that darkness.
Amen. And guys, if you're watching wherever you are in the world, not only, I mean, you can please write in the comments words of strength and encouragement for the nation of Israel, but I would encourage you to do something. Number one, pray for the people of Israel, pray for the nation of Israel, pray for them to be strong, pray for God's deliverance, pray for Israel to turn back to God. And guys, if you want to take another step, do take an actionable step. Join the Land of Israel Fellowship. You can join Ari on Zoom every single week. I think it's like $25 a month we're talking. Guys, you can get directly connected to Ari, to Jeremy, to the Judean mountains. Do that. Take that step. Join the Land of Israel Fellowship. We'll put a link down in the description below. And I will just say too, Israel Summit, June 9th through 11th, Dallas, Texas, coming up. We've added some more speakers. We've added the amazing Israeli viral sensation couple, Yonina. They're going to have an amazing musical concert there. But you guys don't want to wait. The discount that is there right now is only up for a couple more weeks. I would encourage you, if you're thinking about coming, go ahead and click that link down below and sign up. There's tons of people already signed up. It's going to be an amazing, amazing event. So please do that. Guys, as always, stop listening to the lies and propaganda and reconnect or connect with the truth of what's happening in the Land of Israel. We'll be back very soon here at the Land of Israel Network and the Israel House.